You're listening to Peachtree Corners Life, a weekly online radio show sharing ideas, opinions, and news about the city of Peachtree Corners. Now, your host, Rico Figliolini.
This is Rico Figliolini. I'm host of Peachtree Corners Life, along with some other podcasts. And I have some great guests today. Today's discussion is about the MARTA Referendum that's coming up March the 19th. So I have with my guests today Marlon Allen and Paige. They represent GoGwinnett, which is a ballot committee. So I'll read this part this way you're aware of it. It's a ballot committee registered with the Gwinnett County Board of Elections and the Georgia Government Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission. So just to get that legalese out of the way.
Right. There you
who
go.
you're representing and stuff. But thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
It's a hot day, and it's a hot room right now. But we are at Prototype Prime, which is an incubator here in Peachtree Corners. So I want to do a shout-out to them for sharing and providing this podcast space for us that they do every month, and that we do some great interviews here. So looking forward to our discussion about MARTA, because lots of people are talking about it. So,
well, it's a hot topic.
Yes.
Certainly a hot topic.
Then tell me about it, right?
Yeah.
So people for and against it, and it's the only thing on the ballot, March 19th, that people should be aware of. So the normal election cycle of where you would go is where you would go. The normal precinct that you would go to. This is not something you come to City Hall for, which is what some of the things are.
Actually, in some of the cities, now I know in Peachtree Corners, there is nothing else, but in some of the cities around the Gwinnett County area, they do have a city
they do.
On. Some are voting on the Sunday brunch.
Oh, okay. And we've done that. So
That's
yes,
right.
And then I believe Snellville has a city council position open. So we're telling people to double check with your cities to make sure that there has not been a special election called in your city. And if so, then you would have two locations to vote in.
City and the normal
county.
Precinct.
Correct.
Excellent. Thanks for
exactly right.
Thanks for the clarity.
Yeah.
But in Peachtree Corners, it's just this one piece.
Yes.
So we're cool. Great. So introduce yourself, Paige, and then Marlon. Tell me a little bit about yourselves.
Well, I'm Paige Havens, and I am a marketing and community relations consultant here in Gwinnett County. I work on a lot of different initiatives with a lot of small businesses and nonprofits, as well as some major corporations around. And I'm kind of known as a change agent. And when there's something big and important that needs to happen in this community, I've usually got my sleeves rolled up and I'm ready to go. And that's why I'm playing this role on the GoGwinnett solely as a volunteer. Mm-hmm. I have my own personal reasons for advocating for this, as well as professional, and I think this is just something so important that it's worth giving some time to.
Okay. That's great to have people like that are out there fighting and doing things. Marlon?
Yeah. I made my way to Gwinnett County in 2008 from Columbus, Georgia, and moved up here by way of the Boy Scouts of America, worked with them for a while, for about 12 years, shifted gears and went into ministry full time, shifted gears again, and now a small business owner of an apparel company called Ramp Marketing. And we specialize in youth sports uniforms. Outside of that, obviously, I'm an avid lover of Gwinnett County. Mm-hmm. Our family has moved here in 2008, as I mentioned, and we fell in love with Decula, Georgia, but more importantly, we fell in love with Gwinnett County, and we definitely believe that it's a great place for us to raise our family, and our family is very invested in every aspect of what happens in the county, and so that's why I'm here today. I really got my introduction into the county through the Rotary Club of Gwinnett County, which I'm a member of, past president, and also Leadership Gwinnett taught me a lot about how the county has developed over the years, and so very intriguing, and I think it was only befitting that we take this opportunity to be a part of this referendum and to encourage people that it is really the right time to do what we need to do to continue to have Gwinnett as a leading county, as a leading community, not only in the state but nationwide.
Yeah, I mean, Gwinnett County is unbelievable. I've been here since '95, moved down here from New York. Used to mass transit, so this is near and dear to my heart a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been a long time coming, I think, and I have no doubt that the referendum referendum will pass. But it is a fight because there are those that don't want it happening. And but I think, once we get through the explanation, I don't know who wants to handle that, about what is, so describe the referendum in simple terms, what it is that the people are voting on, essentially.
You want to take it?
Yeah, the referendum is essentially that the county residents of the residents of Gwinnett County are simply saying that yes, we give our county leadership, our commissioners, and our county leadership the go, I say, or the yes vote, to move forward with a provisional contract with MARTA. That contract is currently listed on our government website. It's currently listed on our GoGwinnett website, gogwinnett.org, and our residents can take a deeper dive into that. But we're simply saying, as residents of Gwinnett County, that we approve our county government to enter into a formal contract with MARTA.
And it also gives our thumbs up to be able to implement another 1 cent sales tax in Gwinnett to fund it.
Now, that 1 cent takes us to 7 cents.
7%.
So that is in line with most every other county in the region.
Exactly.
We're not going to be higher than anybody.
Right.
Still.
And the taxation, from what I understand, sales taxes generally in Gwinnett County is generated from 75% of that revenue is from outside the county, people visiting from outside the county.
I'd really love to speak to that because, I'm like everybody else. I don't want tax. I'd love for there just to be this fairy godmother that just drops down and just gives us, transit. But we've got to fund this somehow.
That's right.
So as a homeowner and a property owner, all of the property owners in Gwinnett can't subsidize this. The price tag is too big. Right. So the sales tax is the most efficient, effective way for us to get this done. Because, like you said, we have about 25 to 30% is what's estimated is that of our sales tax collected in this county that come back into our coffers. That money comes from people outside of our county.
Yep.
All those people that come here and go to the entertainment venues and shop over at the Forum and that come here, that work here but live somewhere else, they got to buy lunch, while they're buying groceries and the gas that they buy as they pass through. So all of those people are putting a little bit in the bank for us, too. They're using our infrastructure, and they're helping pay for it, too.
That's
so
right. I'm
a huge fan of the sales tax option to fund this because it really is a win-win for us.
So let me ask you, I know the 1 cent sales tax that we do for SPLOST, it renews every 5 years. And every 5 years it's a little different. So some years it's more park stuff, and some years more transportation. But it's up for renewal. Citizens have a right to refuse it and say, I think we've done enough with parks and roads. We don't need that penny sales tax anymore, or education, or whatever it is. And most of it's usually for capital improvements or purchases. Right. Same thing with this?
It is, but this is a much longer term. This carries us out.
Okay. So how long?
2057.
Yep.
2057?
2057.
That's right.
Wow.
And the
That's
reason
a long
is
time.
This,
yes, it is.
This is us saying we're making a long-term commitment to transit.
Right.
This cannot be a decision that we just have to come back and decide every 2 years. We all need to be all in on this.
Right.
Because some of the things, the infrastructure that we're talking about putting into place will take 30 years to build out. Right. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that we can't look at this as just a short-term fix. This is a long-term plan that carries us out with long-term solutions to not only the status of where we are today, but where we vision to be as a community in the future.
So let me ask you, on a yearly basis, or at least at the beginning, how much does that raise? How much revenue in year one will that raise, for example?
I'm not sure how much. I don't think that number has been estimated quite yet. And well, let me back up. It hadn't been shared with us. I'm quite sure they know.
I would think, yeah.
But I do know that over the first 6 years, there's a or at least an estimated amount that we will help to cover operating cost of this initial plan to MARTA.
Okay.
To the average person, Rico, they get an oil change in their car, right? There are some upkeep that they have to do, preventative measures in order to keep that vehicle running to the best of their ability.
Right.
And so for us, when you think about a transit system, that a complicated transit system, an advanced transit system that is servicing a county that's growing faster than probably any county in America, nearly 1 million people in America, in our county.
Yeah.
Then the maintenance for that will carry over the course of the first 6 years of 29%. I think it's about 29% of what we collect will go back to pay for maintenance for the services that are provided.
And that sort of makes sense to me because, quite frankly, none of the mass transit systems in the country run in a profit, if you will. Everything's always in a deficit, and for one reason or another, either and not necessarily because of ridership or lack of ridership or such, but because of those issues, maintenance and such. So
it's an expensive piece of
proposition,
infrastructure. It is, and that's the beauty of the plan that we have before us. I want to really make sure everyone listening understands this is so much more than just 5 miles of heavy rail.
That's right.
Okay,
well, that's what they talk about, right? The heavy rail going to Jimmy Carter and
from Doraville to Jimmy Carter, and then possibly up to Pleasant Hill.
Correct,
Gwinnett
and that's number 2. But if you look at the plan actually shows, I think, further out even.
That's the vision, and that's the hope, and that's why you have to plan long term. And we can't. It doesn't make sense to build different legs of this until we know we've got the funding in place to do it. So we are at a choke point, and we are at a point where transit is the only option to address our gridlock. You know, we have, as a community, kind of turned down this option several times.
Right.
And
I don't even know if it even came up to a vote, really, any of those times, right?
It did.
Did it?
Yeah.
When was it
voted this
back?
down twice.
When was the last time? Actually, that was a while ago.
In the late 90s.
Late 90s, okay.
So, or early 90s.
Early 90s, about 91, I think.
And that was
we had
before
the
me.
option
Okay.
in early 70s.
Right.
When MARTA was first formed. Then in the 90s, we had the option again.
Right.
And, but we've experienced a lot of growth. The region has experienced a lot of growth. And it's hard to imagine when I'm a native Atlantan, okay? So I don't remember much of a life without MARTA somewhere, okay? But I didn't realize that MARTA only touches 2 counties in the region, and that's Fulton and DeKalb.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now it's inched into Clayton.
Right.
But when you think about it, we've got 13 metro Atlanta counties that are just busting at the seams with prosperity and growth. We've got to interconnect. So, this is direct benefit to us here in our community, but also it is an opportunity for us to invest in the future growth of the region overall.
Now, and we were talking a little bit about this heavy rail part component, which is really the first part of Jimmy Carter in 85, right?
Right.
That's the part that would come in first. And that we say first, but that could be 5 years from now. But that's
12 years.
12 years. So,
actually, it's not even
won't be
first.
first.
Right.
Expanded bus routes and
Correct.
And some of those options will be first.
And that's what I want to get to. So transit, when we say transit, we're talking bus routes. No?
It includes bus routes, direct routes, express routes, micro transit. There's a great pilot going on over in the Snellville area where they'll literally come pick you up at your door. It involves paratransit with a bus.
Oh, really?
Whether it's a bus or some sort of transportation that will get you from point A to point B.
So last mile or first mile.
And this also involves paratransit. And so it's such a, for those who don't know, paratransit helps to support those with disabilities. So this is not only connecting us into the region, but it's also interconnecting us. interestingly enough, right here on Holcomb Bridge, there is actually a line from MARTA that runs from Fulton County and a Gwinnett County bus line that runs right up to it, and they literally are within a mile of each other, and they don't connect because MARTA can't come across the Gwinnett County line. So think about, that's not going to take long for us to fix. The bus can now drive over there, and we now have that connectivity. So those will be some instant wins.
And I'm wondering why we didn't take it that last mile to get to that bus, and why we stopped them.
Can't connect them because our service and their service aren't intertwined.
That's so funny.
And so it is a great divide. And so many people ask us, why MARTA? Well, what other choice do we have? I mean, you know, first of all, MARTA's changed a lot, and the MARTA's image has changed a lot over the last 10 years, and what they have done to revamp their board and revamp the region's trust in their services and system. But MARTA is the mass transit in our community. We don't have 3 or 4 choices.
That's right.
So if we're going to connect to a bigger network here, that's got to happen. And they are subject matter experts. They're done. So they said, well, why can't Gwinnett build it out? Why can't we have our own? Gwinnett County government is not necessarily the transit specialists.
Right.
You know, I mean, we have a small transit division, but we've done about as much as we can do with it independently.
That's right.
We need experts in this to help us make this system more efficient, more effective, and be able to serve more people.
That's right.
And to have greater impact in the region.
You know, I just want to say this, and I think it's so befitting. We just come off the 53rd Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
And you're talking about an organization, the NFL. It's a multi-billion-dollar organization, and they take cities and communities through the ringer when they consider bringing the greatest sporting event, to a particular city. And for us to be able to come off of the Super Bowl and to know that MARTA played a huge role in making sure that event was successful. I mean, I've heard people talk about the Atlanta being the host like I've never heard them talk about it before. And I was privileged to go out to San Diego for the Super Bowl when John Elway won his first. I was in Miami when Atlanta went, and that was unfortunate. But
bring that up.
I know, right? We'll get back soon. But I mean, we are right off of what I think was a successful. This region being a successful host. And not only that, we're seeing numbers in terms of the number of people that MARTA was able to transport back and forth throughout the course of that week. And it didn't just start, it just wasn't on Sunday. I mean, Super Bowl fans came in a week before, and we know that even more. And MARTA made some changes on the fly. They made adjustments to their current system so that they were able to accommodate the influx of tourists. Right. And I think that's commendable. And I think we would be absolutely crazy if we didn't consider, MARTA in this expansion to Gwinnett County. And so we believe that our county leaders have done a phenomenal job in researching and doing their due diligence to make sure that this was the best, that we've presented the best possible options so that our quality of life will obviously increase and it won't have a negative impact on it. So,
it's interesting. I remember living in New York when we had you have the subways, you have Long Island Railroad. Right. People don't. If you're not familiar with New York, you have 5 boroughs, so counties that comprise the city of New York, and then you have Long Island, which is 2 other counties out that way. And they built what was called the Long Island Railroad because they wanted the suburbs to be able to come into the city to work and not have to worry about being stuck in traffic for 3 hours, because you literally could be stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Good. If you're coming from if you're driving from Long Island during rush hour.
If you're driving from Lawrenceville to downtown, that can happen too.
People tell me that, and I'm like, no way.
I experience it often.
Yes. Right. And thank God I work like literally 20 minutes from home, so it's not so bad for me. But those poor souls that have to do the bus or the train. My son took MARTA as a commuter to GSU, Georgia State University, from Peachtree Corners. So he would drive to the MARTA station in Doraville and take that down. For the most part, everything was fine. Now, sometimes you have things happen, just like every other mass transit system. There's always going to be either crime or panhandlers or things like that going on. But in essence, he was comfortable doing that and taking that, and it worked for him instead of driving in. I think that's the fear of some people, and that's why in 70 it failed, I guess in 90 it failed because Gwinnett County was a different county back then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's changed. It's majority-minority now. It's 1 million people. It's a growing metropolis. It's being urbanized almost in certain parts of the county. But speak to the fact that, yes, we're going to have heavy rail. It's going to take forever, a long time for it to come out. But really, transit is the piece that is of interest, and how that would work. Because I had questions there, too, why certain things may not be done, or at least that I did not see in the plan.
Well, let's step back a minute and realize that this is just the first phase of this plan. This isn't like the end-all, be-all. Okay. You start with a plan. And as many of us know, especially business owners, you're going to move, and this is a living, breathing thing that's going to move and evolve based upon what the needs are and how things are going to, what priorities need to be in place for our community. Okay. So let's take, for example, like right away, we're looking at something quick and easy that can happen right away with this new contract with MARTA. And I'd like to make the point. Mm-hmm. What this is saying is that MARTA will run our transit system in Gwinnett County. Right. MARTA will be our transit provider with this contract. Okay. So we're turning this over to the subject matter experts to connect. So the first thing they're going to do is connect those routes that are just sitting, butting right up to each other and aren't working. Okay. They are immediately going to be able to start expanding the hours that we offer. I have a lot of people say, Paige, I see a lot of these trains riding or buses riding around, and they seem pretty empty. Well, what we hear from the riders is that we don't offer enough routes, and we don't offer enough time, like frequency.
Yeah.
And that a lot of them need nights and weekends to be able to get where they need to go. So evenings and weekends, Sunday service will begin almost immediately. So we will already begin to put some big pieces into play. Those two are just quick wins. More routes will be brought into play. One of my biggest motivations is my husband is one of those. Your wife is one of those. That commutes downtown. They get on a park and ride and they go, and they take an express route. But I mean, my husband has 3 choices in the mornings and 2 choices back out. So if he misses that window of time, I've had to drive into town to go get him.
Really?
Yeah. And I've also, we've had situations where his office makes a decision unbeknownst to him, and they close at 1 o'clock. Well, he can't get a bus till 4.
That's right. Huh.
So all this immediately will have more choices for those people.
I can hear the Uber driver saying, "Good, I should be down in that area."
There's a surge in Uber for sure. But
that's exactly right.
But this will allow more of those express routes. Another one that option in the plan that comes about fairly quickly, or it is faster to bring on than heavy rail, is the bus rapid transit. And what that is creating dedicated lanes for buses, so they don't have to stop. And you create, and I'm not the engineer, but supposedly you can create routes that keep them from having to stop at certain stoplights and various things, and they move through traffic much faster. Those lanes are not available to cars at any time, only for buses. And there's amazing technology that goes with that changes the lights and signals that allows those buses to get going where they need to go. Yep. So, so there's going to be some early things on that are we're going to see some relief and some new options. But we're just going to have to be patient with it. and building the rail, the heavy rail piece of it, you have to understand it doesn't even sit in our own county right now. We still have to cross through several other jurisdictions. But, certainly the Peachtree Corners corridor here is going to benefit greatly. Now, the multimodal hub that's coming. So at the MARTA station, the first train station at Jimmy Carter Boulevard, part of that is a multimodal hub where all of these other aspects, the express routes, the park and ride people, the paratransit can all come into this one hub and then insurge into other parts of the system, okay? So I'm not even sure, ultimately, we might not decide, I don't know, that we don't need something further out because it's going to be a hub and spoke service once we get it inside the county. Does that make sense?
That's interesting, sure.
So, but what's great about it is, as I understand it, we own the land. Gwinnett County owns the land now of where that station is going to sit. We can go ahead and build that multimodal station now.
So there's no additional purchases, condemnation. Usually you have to condemn
Not
right
for
of
that,
way and stuff.
No. Certainly there's a lot of right of way and road beds that are going to need to be done. But Gwinnett's been anticipating this and looking ahead to this and knowing, we might not be 100% sure what's going to go on that tract of land, but they have been very diligent in trying to go ahead, as those properties have come available, to go ahead and scoop those up so that we have the ability to move faster on this.
Well, that's a good thing. Because otherwise people would be like, wow, it's going to take 10 years before you break ground even.
Yes.
Right.
But, that's like, and that's a big thing. I mean, we're doing a roundabout here, and it took almost a year to be able to get all the property together for the roundabout because you're dealing with 4 different property owners. So I can see Peachtree Corners residents that work downtown that might want to do this, especially if because that's what I looked at too. I looked at, you look in the city and you look at where the MARTA routes, where the stops are, and they're not everywhere. They're reasonably good. They have added since I've been here since '95. Certainly not like New York, but that's a whole different story, right? So, but people look at it and say, are you near where I'm going to be going? Is there something to get me that last mile? Do I have to take 3 different things to get to that last mile? And how many times is it picking up? Do I have to wait half an hour or an hour between the transit coming there or not? So a little bit of it has to be, I guess, a loss leader in a way, right? The schedule has to be put in for people to get used to that schedule and then wanting to use it.
And then you adapt.
Yeah.
If something isn't working, that is one thing I think is so beautiful about our community is that we're very innovative in our thinking.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to move and shake here. And, so that's why we've got to make a long-term commitment to finding a solution and to offering transit. And if something's not working, I have no doubt that we'll come back and decide.
Exactly.
Or who knows what's going to be invented out of Prototype Prime here.
Right.
In the next 10 years, that there might be a whole new technology that comes out that would put 90% of this out of date, and then but we've got to pick a place to start. We've got to start doing something to get some cars off the road. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not ever going to ride transit. And I said, well, wouldn't you like 20 other people to ride transit besides you? That brings up 20 slots on the interstate for you? Oh.
The only thing I was concerned about, and I wish that it was, and it may still be, is that it would be more sustainable, like either using natural gas, which is less carbon maybe out there. It's debatable on how that works, right? Or using electric vehicles to be able to do that as opposed to, gasoline or diesel engines to drive the transit. That's the only thing that I was looking at as a downside, a negative side to it. But that's something that can come about at some point, I would hope.
Well,
I was going to say, Rico, I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who really is researching. He's researching more than I am, the autonomous electric vehicles. I don't know if you've heard about those, but basically vehicles that, nobody's driving, but you hop in them and they have dedicated lanes. And
y'all have a test program here, don't you?
Correct.
Vehicle. Okay.
Yeah,
well, see, I didn't realize that. And so the technology is so new.
Yeah.
And it's a huge risk to take to implement that type of technology where,
well, for sure,
it hadn't been tested in terms of it being an electric vehicle.
For sure, the autonomous part. I mean, it's a little less frustrating in a dedicated lane, I think.
Right.
It's a little bit more easily done. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking more about getting away from gas and getting more.
Gwinnett County buses now use the efficient fuels. One of the things that's in a provision of the MARTA contract that is different than anybody else has is we have the ability to choose our service standards. So as a community, our commission could say we only want gas-powered buses in our community.
Right.
We want to minimize that. So we might pay a little more premium for that, but we can say the buses that serve Gwinnett County we want at this standard. We can say we want our train stations to look like this instead of that.
Right.
So when the opportunity comes, let's say the referendum gets passed.
Yes.
And the opportunity comes, there's already some sort of master plan obviously in place, or at least that was discussed. Will there be further discussions after that?
Always. Again, it's not just close the book and go.
Okay.
I mean, you got to think county leadership is going to change.
True.
So
it has changed.
there are some ideas that we believe, you're exactly right, and there are some ideas that new leadership will come, and as we mentioned, even technology changes. So you got to think we're implementing, a transit system in Gwinnett County that other I won't even necessarily say advanced. Communities have already implemented, but you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
So there are some metropolitan areas around the nation that have already implemented what we're doing right now. So you got to imagine that they are already looking to the next best thing, which I think will cause us to do the same thing in our research. And I even believe that our county leadership, particularly those ones that are in transportation, are designing this plan so that we can implement newer technology more seamlessly than just tearing down what we've created and then trying to build something new.
Right.
I think that's why there is hesitancy to say that we're going to put 14 heavy rail stations in Gwinnett County.
Right.
Yes. I can't see that.
I mean, everybody's like, well, I didn't realize it wasn't going to go all the way out to my house. I love it. In so many other initiatives, everybody says, not in my backyard. But in this one, it's, if you're not coming to my driveway, I'm not doing it. But that the infrastructure is so expensive in that there are other new solutions coming out that are proving very effective. And our leadership has traveled all over the world. They've traveled to Asia and to Europe and to see some of the best transit systems in the world.
Well, they're doing it way better than us.
Right.
Yes, and so I've got to believe that evaluating those best practices and saying, all right, let's pick a place to start. Let's do this. So, and a great example is these dedicated lanes for bus rapid transit. Okay, well, what if automated cars do come about? Now we've already got a dedicated lane in place.
That's right.
So I think that let's give everybody a little credit here.
Right.
They're looking ahead, and we, as a community, commissioned some of the best minds in the world to help us put this plan together.
Right.
And they looked at the feasibility of what a potential sales tax could generate, and what could we buy for that price tag, and what could we do to begin to push ourselves forward. And so that's where we've come in this, and that's what we have before us. And it doesn't have to be written in stone, but we've got to do something.
And I got to say that the former Commissioner Lynette Howard did a great job in negotiating what she did, where the money stays in Gwinnett County for transit.
Right.
Yes. Well, we also did what really makes this referendum different is the control that Gwinnett has over the funds. So let's walk through that.
Very important.
Because a lot of people in the past, the anti-sentiment was, we're not just going to turn our check over
our taxes over to
MARTA, okay? So Commission heard that, went in and negotiated a deal. So this contract says that every single penny that is collected comes back to Gwinnett. Doesn't go to another person. Doesn't go to MARTA, doesn't go to third party. It goes back into Gwinnett County coffers in a separate fund. And we have complete control of disbursement of those funds. So any contracts let, any project scope, any budgets, we have full approval of that before it's implemented.
Okay.
So we also have the ability to audit at any time any of that. And then we also have 3 seats on the MARTA board.
Right.
And what we probably don't need to underestimate here is not only do we have 3 seats on the MARTA board, but we have 4 seats on the ATL board.
And the ATL board is?
That is the Atlanta Transit Link.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's the new regional transportation group that's looking at. So MARTA stays focused on where they serve, Fulton,
Right.
DeKalb,
Right.
and hopefully Gwinnett, right?
Okay.
And Clayton. So, but there's another group that is formed that is looking at the overall regional plan
Right.
for all the metro area. And I think ultimately you're going to see a blend of those, and we are just positioned to have great input, insight, and oversight to all of that process and have a very strong voice at the table.
So to be clear, I think originally at the beginning you said MARTA will handle and manage the system because that's what they do, but we control the funding of what and how that disbursement of those funds are used
Absolutely.
by MARTA as far as, because they still have to be the ones that implement the job,
And that,
if you will.
That's what Marlon was talking about earlier. In the first 6 years, 1/3 of the sales tax revenue that is collected will go to basically contracting and paying MARTA to provide this service to us. And then the balance of that collected in this period goes towards the implementation of the projects.
Okay. 6 years. Sounds good. What have you heard as far as a negative that you can address here? You know, I'm sure you've been to other meetings and stuff.
Right.
What's the biggest, aside from not being in my backyard? Everyone, the people that do that all the time, they don't like change. Everything's comfortable. And what they want. But what maybe 1 or 2 big negative things?
I think the obvious is obviously the 1-cent sales tax, and I'm like Paige. I don't want to pay more taxes, but when you think about the consumption of commodities within the community that you live in and what you consume as a family, and what you'll get out of it, that small investment, I think is well worth it. Now, obviously, Rico, that's my opinion.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I get that. Yeah.
So, to answer your question, I think the biggest deal, obviously, is the 1-cent sales tax. The next thing is there is, at least in what I've heard at some of the open houses and town halls, is well, you're taxing me, but this plan doesn't cover, where I stay, or it doesn't cover a bigger portion of Gwinnett County. Gwinnett County is a huge county in terms of square space, and so, our rebuttal to them is that this is our initial plan. And as Paige mentioned, you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere,
They can build on
and then continue to build on that. And our I guess our encouragement to our citizens is that please know that county leadership that have busted their tails behind the scenes, not just in the past couple of months that we've been talking about it. But this has been going on 4, 5, 6, however long.
Yeah.
They've been thinking about it and also developing this plan, and it's all for the sake of the citizens of Gwinnett County. They are very, very considerate. They're very careful about making decisions that impact, the citizens of our county. And I would truly say, and I just in my observation, that these folks, that our county leadership They love us. They want the best for us, and the decisions that they're making. I just hope that our folks can really trust that it's the right decision, and that there are no ulterior motives behind it.
I mean, there's always going to be some conspiracy theories and stuff out there.
Right. Well, I think it's important that we understand that it was a period of like 6 years where Gwinnett County has been gathering data on all of this. There were 30 community events held. There were 12-stop countywide bus tour that went around to all the different communities around. There were 10 focus groups, over almost 6,000 survey participants polled, as well as 200 public open house events and 1,000 true scientific poll kind of research done, asking Gwinnettians, what do you want? What do you want? Where do you want it? Where do you get it? That's where this came from. You take that on top of laying over what's logistically possible, and so I've got to believe that we've got the best plan here. So this is what we've asked for. And not everybody gets, my kids don't get everything they want on their Christmas list.
That's right.
But it is, this I believe is serving the greatest good in our community, and again, it's a plan we can build on for the future.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you there, and there are people that it's not just about driving, right?
Yes.
I mean, there are other people that serve the community, that work in our community, that might not have a car, might need to get somewhere, or they have a car, but they're not going to be driving all the way into the city. But maybe they need to go to Sewanee or to Lawrenceville to take care of something. There might be a one-car family.
Well, maybe you had an alternate option to Uber if you just want to go out for a drink in the evenings and not worry about the safety of your driving. So,
there's that too.
And there's a population that often gets minimalized in our community, and not intentionally, but but about 20% of our population are disabled. And this option offers new paratransit. Right now, our paratransit only serves about 20% of our community. This will expand out to serve about 65% of our community.
So if you're needing this and this is in place, you would contact the county?
Correct.
You'd register?
Correct.
And then you would be able to call any time to get service?
So, and MARTA already has a very extensive infrastructure in this as well. So, so think about, I host a brain injury support group. So this is an important thing to me because I work with this population, and it breaks my heart when you have people who have fought literally to claim their life back, and they want to work. They want to be independent. They want to be contributing members of society, but they can't drive. The brain damage doesn't allow them to drive, but believe it or not, they really are. Many of them are very capable of working. And there are lots of employers out there hungry to employ this population, but even like the developmental disability, a lot of them can't drive. So we could employ a whole nother group of people in our community if we could enable them transportation. So that's kind of like a hidden story over here that I hope that those who have people in their lives that suffer with disabilities, not to forget the senior citizens that more and more of our parents are, we're having the aging of America, and they want to age in place. They want to be at home, but sometimes it's not safe for them to drive anymore. Now we give them more option, and maybe they don't feel as diminished in that way.
You know what's funny? When I moved here from New York and I brought my in-laws with me, they were so used to taking the bus to the little supermarket place where they could buy the fresh vegetables, and they would do that every week, sometimes every third day, because that's the way they were. They wanted their stuff like that fresh. And when we moved here, They were really short of us driving them around. There was no Uber even then.
Right.
But there was really no way for them to easily, even to go to Ingalls, for example, from where we lived, there was a 45-minute walk for them. And in August, summer, as most people know, that's a tough thing for a 70-year-old to do.
Right.
You know, and thank God we had good friends that would see them on the road and pick them up and bring them home sometimes.
Wow.
But so I can see the utility here, and also the population is changing. Right, younger people are less likely to buy a car. They're more likely to live in a city more close together, where there's, I think the work, live, and play is overused.
Yes.
A millennial is probably overused, but there is that segment of the population that they want to be able to just walk out, go to dinner, take the train or the bus to work, come back to the apartment or the condo, wherever they live. Gwinnett County's going that way. I don't know. Is a million people enough? Do we need 2 million people here to get us there? The density, right? Of that.
Right.
But the parts that are closer to the city definitely are getting more dense.
Yes.
That's right.
We're building, right? We're building on land that's...
Well, and history shows that when you put transit in, it draws density in a positive way.
Yeah.
Because it brings more business, which bigger business feeds smaller business. It creates more amenities for residents. You then have that. There's a lot of positive benefit, and that's just, you talked about objections earlier. Some people say, well, I'm worried about what this is going to do to my property value. Well, I'm not a bit worried about it, because you can just take a ride down to Chamblee, take a ride down to Brookhaven, and take a ride down to Lennox, and take a look at what those property values are.
Yeah, Brookhaven is not having a problem.
That's right.
Skyrocketing, and there are numbers that show that there are significant increases in that. So that's just. I hope that we can correct that perception.
You know what? It's taken a little while for those areas to get there, but it's and it's also areas that weren't doing well to begin with, right?
Right.
A poorer population, rundown properties in some places that had an opportunity for someone to come in and invest. Young families that want to start, and from what I understand, even Dunwoody right now, it's almost like. Out of price range for some people, they're looking at Chamblee instead, which is right next door, right? So, but these things, transit and all that, would help. We're at the end of our time.
Okay.
So
wow, that went by fast.
I know, right? Everyone says, "Do we have enough things to talk about?" I'm like, we could go on for hours. I'm sure.
There's lots to discuss on this topic.
For sure here. So why don't you give us, give whoever's listening. The opportunity to where can they go to find out more information? When's the referendum election? Is there early voting, which I believe there is? So why don't you give us some of that?
Go ahead, Paige. And I would love to just end it by, asking our listeners for their support and giving them a few reasons why we really believe we can do that.
That's perfect.
Okay, so the referendum is March 19th. Put it on your calendar. Stop right now.
There you go.
Go put it on your calendar, March 19th. But you can also do early voting for a 2-week period starting February 25th. So in less than 20 days, we can start saying yes to this. So make sure to know for sure where you need to go to vote. You can go to Gwinnett County's election website. You can learn extensive information about the plan and what is coming where at at GwinnettCounty.com. And there are also a lot of open houses being offered right now where you can say, hey, I live right here. What's coming near me? So I challenge you to go to one of those sessions. And then you can certainly learn how to help us advocate for this. We cannot assume that this is going to pass. There are... we all need our voices there, and we need everyone at the polls. But our website for the GoGwinnett Committee is GoGwinnett.org.
Yep. And so we're going to ask you for your support. And if you were to ask me, Marlon, why should I vote for this on March 19th? And I'll say it's for several reasons. And number one, I would say quality of life. I think that your life will improve drastically if you're not sitting in traffic. In the next 20 years, Gwinnett County will see an increase in population of over 500,000 folks, which means there's more vehicles on the roads, which means that you're going to be in traffic a whole lot longer than even what you're in now. And so for us as a county and as citizens of this great county, it's important that we are proactive in making great decisions to make sure that our quality of life is maintained. So reduced traffic, that's another reason. Obviously, we want to make sure that the gridlock that we're experiencing today is reduced and eventually eliminated, and the options of transit will certainly do that. And then finally, we believe that we're in Gwinnett County not only for the school system that we are certainly proud of, but the high-paying, high-wage jobs that not only are here now today, but will eventually come because of a more advanced transit system. So that's why I want you to vote yes on March 19th. We thank you in advance for your support, and we'll see you at the polls.
Excellently. Well done. My name is Rico Figliolini. I'm host of Peachtree Corners Life. I want to thank Paige and Marlon for sharing their insight in the referendum that's coming up. And they will, or part of them, or maybe both of them, I know Marlon for sure, it sounds like, will be part of another podcast called Capitalist Sage, which I co-host with Carl Barham. And that's more of a business-oriented podcast. So we're going to be discussing a bit about how businesses affect policy in government. That's that particular one. That'll be on the 21st of March is when we're going to be doing that one. Or 21st of February, actually.
There you go.
We're doing that one. Yeah,
Time is going by fast.
Oh, my goodness. It's amazing. So make sure you're out there to vote. I want to thank again Prototype Prime for providing podcast studio for us to do this. And share this Facebook live feed or the podcast, which you can find on iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, any of the podcast places. But thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Life with Rico Figliolini. You can listen to our live stream on Spreaker every Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. or on demand at iHeartRadio, Spotify, and iTunes. Don't forget to like our Facebook page for notification of our live video streams of the show. Catch our other podcast shows at PeachtreeCornersLife.com.